with the ambassador maybe telling us his refugee story, and ideally you will be asking a lot of questions. Don't make me ask all the questions, please.
As Vice Provost for International Affairs, and if you know my biography, I think you know that I was a U.S. ambassador twice, had a 32-year career as a United States diplomat, also got my bachelor's at Texas Tech, just like you guys are doing. A lot of people don't know is that I started out life as a refugee also. As a U.S. ambassador, 25 years in Africa, I had a chance to visit a lot of refugee camps. And interestingly, I'm the only U.S. ambassador who ever was in a refugee camp as a refugee, not just as a visitor. And the countries where I worked, I always made a point of visiting every single refugee camp, because the message I wanted to present was that here's this guy that comes out of this big car with an American flag on it, and dressed in a nice suit or whatever, but he didn't start life that way. And I could look the people in the eye and say, I know what you're going through because I was exactly where you are once upon a time. The truth is, guys, no one starts out wanting to be a refugee, okay? Especially when you're a little kid. I happened to be a refugee when I was 7 years old. And the day started like any other day in Hungary. I was supposed to go to school, but the radio said school was closed because there were events going on, and it turned out that there was a small war. Our country, Hungary, tried to throw the Soviet Union out. My dad was in the military. He took the side of the people, the revolutionaries. When you have a country of 10 million people going up against a country of 200 million people, guess who wins in the end? The outcome is already ordained. Even if you have a brief spell of victory, we had in Hungary a spell of victory for about 10 days. And after that, the Russians came in with 2,000 tanks. It was done. My dad was sentenced to death. So the choice we had was either to flee the country or for him to be executed. For me to then be very restricted in what I could achieve in life, because if you fought against the communists, then your future was set. So one day my dad said that we were going on a picnic. They didn't tell me the truth because they didn't want me to know in case we were intercepted by the secret police. The picnic started in October of 1956 and is going on to this day. Turned out to be very long. Walked across the border that night through snowfields, barking dogs, machine gun nests, landmines. And then you cross this border. In the Middle East is a little different. But in my case, you cross the border, and when you arrive at the next place, you no longer speak the language. Somebody has to do to make them a refugee. I mean, do you guys know?
The difference between being a migrant and being a refugee.
Well, first of all, let's talk about a real refugee. What makes somebody a refugee, in the legal sense?
Being forced out of their home due to war?
It's going in the right direction. Crossing an international border. Okay? So that first division is to be considered a refugee, you have to cross an international border. And you have to cross that international border because you have a fear for your safety or security. And it has to be a legitimate fear. And that, then we get into complications. Because if you cross an international border because you don't like the economic prospects in your country, then you're technically not a refugee. But then you have, if you can also be a refugee inside your own country, like in Sudan, you have so many people that are across the border, then the United Nations High Commission for Refugees doesn't really deal with you. So there's another organization. So the current situation is extremely complex of humanity. But we also have to remember that the largest pool of these unfortunate folks are going to countries that are right next to and those countries are really not dealt to or equipped to deal with millions of people, because they're dealing with millions of people. The Jordanians and the other, whereas the Europeans are dealing with hundreds of thousands of people. Honest to goodness, the Europeans should not have a problem dealing with that, because Europe is the 26 nations of Europe are the world. They have a population of about 450 million people, but they are just not organized to deal with this. And it seems like the Europeans have redd up their borderless region during a period of wealth and growth and no refugee problems. So it worked great then. But now, I think that's long enough for me to go on without, because this is your class, guys, so, you know, let's talk about issues you want to talk about. And then I think we have some other visitors, right? Okay. All right, so, yes, we'll start.
My name is Alyssa Herzog. I'm a senior journalism major here at Tech. My question is, towards the beginning of your story, you mentioned that you had to rely solely on people either welcoming you or not. Did you face any discrimination on your journey?
No, and that's an excellent question, and I'll tell you why. Okay, look at me. You know, I had fair hair when I was young, blue eyes. And even though some Hungarians are Asiatics, you know, from Central Asia, my family was partially German, so I looked just like the people I was going to. While religion was forbidden in Hungary, the tradition was Christian. So the Austrians, and we had been in an empire together with Austria-Hungary. It existed as an empire previous to World War I for hundreds of years. So the Austrians, seeing us coming across, saw us as them. They did not see us as others. If I had arrived with much darker skin and a different religion, then the reception might have been a little bit different. Initial, so if you have refugees from Liberia going to Guinea to Sierra Leone and back and forth, same ethnic groups, same languages, same religions. So they see the folks coming across as, you know, as country, you know, as fellow countrymen. So even though they're very, very poor, they give out of their poverty. And that's what's happening in parts of Lebanon and Jordan.
I'm a junior journalism major. I was just wondering, you mentioned that you were 7 whenever you had to leave. What items did you bring with you?
Nothing.
You weren't able to bring anything?
Nothing. We packed for a picnic in the country.
Okay. Because I know we see pictures
The
coming
only
out.
thing, well, actually, there was a tragedy market. British pounds. All of us converted all of his wealth in Hungary to British pounds. When we got to Austria, it turned out that those were all counterfeit. So we had the clothes on our back. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Rashayla Daniels, I'm a senior journalism major. What kind of transition does like a child refuge, difficult was that for you, and how might that be similar?
Good question. Children are incredibly resilient and flexible. And I was speaking German very quickly. And then the same thing happened to me a year later coming to the United States. Get on a plane, get off the next day, you get off the plane.